Hi, so it's been over a week now since I finished my first 100k ultra race, where I also finished in third place. If you haven't seen that video, I will leave a link in the description below. Except for the terrain, which was much more technical than I had predicted, I felt well prepared. So in this video, I will mostly talk about what worked for me and what kind of stuff I brought for my race. And hopefully this will give you some new insights before your next ultra. I actually don't have any regrets in regards of my preparation leading up to this race, and I think that is to some extent to do with the fact that I have run several marathons and I was not totally unexperienced by running for several hours. But instead of running for 3 to 4 hours, I now ran for 15 hours, but still my experience from marathon helped me in some way to prepare for this race. So I will now give you my best tips for you who are going to run an ultra, what to think of and what to bring. So let's start with my best tips regarding clothes. In my race, the weather was perfect with 10 to 15 degrees Celsius, some wind, but I mostly ran surrounded by trees, so I didn't notice that until I ran up a mountain. But to carry a light windbreaker was a must for me, regardless of low temperature or not. You never know if or when you will be surprised by the weather. In my case, there were large temperature differences depending on whether I ran up a mountain or if I was running on the ground in the woods. And also, after you have been running for a while, your body will have harder to regulating your body's temperature, and in many races it's also a part of your mandatory equipment. And together with a windbreaker, I can recommend having a buff with you. It's so useful. In the beginning I had it around my neck, but as it got hot I put it around my wrist, and I use it to wipe my face and around my mouth because you get so sweaty and sticky. I wore a pair of long socks as it's nice to have something that protects the ankles from gravel that splashes up on your legs, or if you run in tall grass. I decided not to run with toe socks, although I had seen a lot of ultra runners using them, but my regular socks worked fine. I also had these fingerless gloves so to not get any abrasions from my poles. And regarding poles, I knew that there would be some pretty steep slopes with sometimes 30% of inclination, and therefore I took the decision to run with the poles. And that was one of the best decisions I made, I think, since the slopes were pretty steep with a lot of stones and roots. When I was tired, they helped me keep going up and up that hill, and when I was running downhill, they helped me to slow down a bit so not to fall. When I ran on the flat, I carried them on my backpack in a quiver from Salomon. And by the way, I will leave a link to the most of the gear I used in the description. So this was a part of what I was wearing, but now let's talk about energy intake. Primarily, the most important thing, of course, bring enough energy. I can recommend gels, and take your gels even if you don't think you need to. Have an energy plan. I took about 2 gels per hour, and each contained 20 grams of carbs, and maybe about every third gel contained caffeine. And I supplemented this with energy drinks and candy at the energy station, and I also drank a lot of water, of course. I carried the water in 2 bottles like this, containing half a liter each and not in a bladder. Bottles are so much easier to refill at the water station. For me, the biggest worry was that my stomach would get upset running for this long, but it went very well, thanks to the fact that I had an even energy supply throughout the race. I ate a pancake and a sandwich, and that was the only solid food I ate through the whole race. It was to satisfy my hunger, but you should know that you can do without eating solid food during an ultra of this length. Hunger is a sign of empty stomach, and that can be unpleasant, of course, but it's not a sign of low energy intake. So now let's talk about the other stuff I brought besides clothes and energy. Let's talk about baby powder. I had baby powder on my feet when I started, and when I got to my drop bag after 50k, I changed my socks and powdered my feet again. They became dry and smelled good. It's also helped to avoid getting abrasion. Bring a chapstick. Your lips get really dry when you run, especially if it's windy and sunny. I carry that with me the whole race. When I run a marathon, I don't bring it with me, but I always have one in my drop bag to use after the race. Wet wipes. Also something I put in my drop bag. To be able to use wet wipes or baby wipes on your face, arms and legs felt lovely after running for 7 hours. This was actually something I learned from watching runners at the UTMB. Vaseline and Body Glide. I brought Body Glide and that's great, but I always combine that with Vaseline. I feel like Vaseline lasts longer on your skin and it's easier to put on your toes, which I always do on any longer race. Compeed. I had Compeed with me and I needed to put a blister on one of my toes after 50k. I think that's because I ran so much uphill and downhill that my foot slipped more than usual in the shoe. But remember that if you use my tip with baby powder, that nothing sticks on your skin after using that. Magnesium lotion. I also had a magnesium lotion halfway that I rubbed my legs with. It's hard to say how much it helped, but it felt so nice and that feeling was anyway worth something. In my drop bag I also had a change of clothes and I did change my top and my socks, and I also had another pair of running shoes, but I didn't change them. I just had them there in case of. The shoes I ran in still felt fine halfway, so I didn't dare to switch. I ran with Salomon Advanced and my just in case shoes were Saucony Peregrine. Changing my socks and powder them with some baby powder was enough for me and my feet. Bring a little plastic bag or have one pocket earmarked for your trash. If you have gels, you will have that grease everywhere if you don't put the leftovers somewhere. And I know that a lot of running vests, including my Salomon Advanced Skin, have this little pocket where you can store trash. But as you can see, that pocket is very small, and when you are tired and trying to put something in there, you will get sticky everywhere. And this was something I learned when racing, so I decided along the way to dedicate one of my pockets in my running shorts to fill with trash. And when I arrived at an energy station, I just emptied it in their garbage can. My next tip is that you have a watch with good battery life. It can be more important than you think mentally to have a watch that actually shows that you are getting closer and closer to the finish line for each step, even if it doesn't feel like it at the time. And if your watch dies in the latter half of the race, that can be tough. When I got to the finish line, I had a week's battery life left on my Garmin Phoenix. And running ultras is so much more than your physical ability. It's also depending a lot on your mental ability. So I advise you to divide the race in smaller parts. Maybe like I did. My next goal was always the next energy station to refill my water bottles and reward myself with some candy. You can watch the story when I ran my first 100k and my chase for the podium right here. And I hope I could give you some useful tips for your next ultra race. And remember that you cannot prepare for everything because unexpected things will probably happen. But if you have prepared as best you can, you have more energy to put on the unexpected and on the mental struggle. And have a nice run, and I see you soon. Bye!